Have you guys ever done one of those name every Pokemon from memory type of quizzes? It's crazy how you can spend so much time thinking, discussing and playing Pokemon and still forget Doduo exists at the most important moment. And it got me thinking, what is the most forgettable Pokemon of every generation? While I am certainly not the first to ask that question, I think that is actually an advantage, because as we'll see in this video, there are several Pokemon that have become the poster child of forgettable and as such, have actually become quite memorable thanks to it, or even been on Game Freak's radar in regards to new evolutions and the like. So let's get the ball rolling with Generation 1, which is easily one of the hardest gens right out of the gate. All 151 Kanto Pokemon are ingrained into the brains and DNA of every single kid growing up in the 90s and 2000s. If the games didn't do it, the TCG stepped up, and even the Pokerap helped a lot. I mean, I don't even need to look up the lyrics to know it's Electro, Diglett, Nidoran, Mankey, and I haven't heard this song in like more than 10 years. So, point being, every single Pokemon in Gen 1 is extremely memorable for those that lived through Pokemania, and for those that didn't, there are 2 entire remakes, they're all featured in every Johto game as well, and they have received a ton of new forms across the many generations. And so I decided to look at this from a purely forgettable standpoint. If all of us had to name every Gen 1 Pokemon from memory, which one would most of us miss? I'd wager the answer is Tangela. Think about it. Any Pokemon with an evolution family is automatically out, because those have multiple opportunities to be remembered. After all, even though Execute is a pretty forgettable Pokemon, Executor thanks to Alola is not, and if you think of one, you think of the other. And while Tangela can evolve, it evolves in a Pokemon from a completely different generation, meaning your mind most likely won't be going there. Pokemon like Lapras, Mr. Mime and Lickitung are prominently featured in the anime, while Tauros, Kangaskhan and Pinsir are all quite memorable in their own right for various reasons. Tangela is not really relevant in the anime, it is surprisingly difficult to find in any Kanto based game, and because it's so weak, you won't remember it from like competitive battling or having an overpowered trading card either. If Surfetch'd hadn't existed, I think Farfetch'd would have been fierce competition for Tangela, but we are now at the point where Ash has used one on his team. That definitely helps make you more memorable. So yeah, Tangela is the most forgettable Pokemon from a generation where really no Pokemon is. On to Generation 2, which was only a few years ago absolutely packed to the brim with forgettable faces. But Game Freak got to them before I could, and gave new forms and evolutions to a bunch of them, like Standler, Quillfish, Dunsparce, Girafarig and Delibird. That has made our job here a lot more difficult. My first idea was to look at the baby Pokemon of this generation, always a bit of a forgettable trope. But due to the fact that Daycare was a new addition in this gen, I think you are somewhat likely to make that connection with Johto, on top of the infamous egg you receive early in the game with an increased shiny chance. So instead, I would say the truly most forgettable Pokemon of Johto is Mantine. Yes, it did receive a new evolution in Gen 4, but it was a baby form, which, like I just said, are not the most memorable bunch to begin with. It was also relatively prominently featured in Gen 7 with the Mantine surfing minigame, but I don't know, I don't think that is enough to say it makes Mantine memorable. I'd say its strongest competition is probably Ledyba and Ladian, but I feel like those two are also coming close to that so forgettable it's noteworthy camp, plus they're an evolution family, so double the chances, meaning Mantine gets the questionable honor. Now that Game Freak has done so much cleanup work in Johto, I feel like Generation 3 is the new gen with the most forgettable Pokemon. You've got Castform, who is very lucky it has its unique weather abilities because it's completely unremarkable otherwise, Volbeat and Illumise, who only skirt by because there's 2 of them, and Relicanth feels like it was made to be forgotten, but I don't think it's unremarkable enough. The Clamperl family is without a shadow of a doubt the most forgettable 3-stage family in Pokemon history, but since there is strength in numbers, they too miss out, meaning my pick is Luvdisc. Especially now that hard skill hunting isn't really a thing anymore like it was on like the DS and 3DS, Luvdisc has truly lost its niche, and really the only thing that made it somewhat memorable. I'm sure some people will still have it lingering in the back of their minds from those hard skill hunting days, but with every day that passes, another poor soul forgets Luvdisc is even part of this massive media franchise. Now, there is one name that I purposefully didn't mention for Gen 3, despite my opinion that it's among Luvdisc's fiercest rivals for the top spot. And the reason for that is because the true effects of its forgettableness aren't felt until Gen 4. I'm talking about Chimecho, which based on the games is forgettable beyond belief, since it's incredibly rare, barely any trainers use it, and it sucks in battle. In the anime, it was very prominently featured in the Gen 3 saga as one of James's main Pokémon, which means it instead passes on its forgettable genes to Chingling, which truly has nothing going for it. It's a baby Pokémon of one of the most forgettable Pokémon ever. It never stood a chance. Especially not in a region which has a ton of cross-gen evolutions, meaning final stages, which are generally speaking among the most memorable Pokémon. And for any stragglers like Chatot and Carnivine, Legends Arceus was an absolute blessing. Just in general, that game did wonders to the notoriety of Sinnoh Pokémon, since it effectively forces you to engage with them in order to progress the game in a way the core games do not. But even in that title, Chingling is a footnote, with nothing memorable about it beyond that terrible frame rate in the initial trailer. And if that's your most remarkable feature, you know you're in trouble. Onto Gen 5, which has the biggest dex of all, meaning there are bound to be some Pokémon who slip through the cracks. However, the newfound popularity of this gen has also caused a bit of a movement that has resulted in many of this gen's Pokémon getting the so forgettable they're memorable treatment. Maractus is the perfect example, but Alomomola and Cryogono are also examples of Pokémon that always come up whenever people bring up the most forgettable Pokémon. And you know, if they're the first Pokémon you bring up when thinking about anything, they aren't that forgettable. But you know who are never brought up? LGM and BGM. I know I have so far said that evolution families have double the chances, but even with those increased odds, these two still seem to be unable to pull anything off. I have genuinely never heard anyone discuss these Pokémon, which is honestly a bit of a shame if you ask me, because I think they're really cool when I actually kinda like them. But maybe that is the problem. Everyone kinda likes them, but no one is crazy about them. Is LGM or BEM your favorite Pokémon? Let me know in the comments. I'm curious if I'm right or if this is just an idea that's completely false. Anyway, unless I get the whole BEM fan community pouring in to prove me wrong, I'm calling this duo the most forgettable faces of Unova. From the biggest dex to the smallest one now, as we continue with Kalos. Here a new kind of memorable Pokémon emerges. The Pokémon that are so hated they become memorable. Like Binacle or Barbaracle for example. Or Klefki, one of the poster childs of the Objectmon that always get people riled up for some reason. So yeah, not forgettable at least. Carbink can consider itself very lucky it's affiliated with Diancie, because beyond that it's forgettable as hell. And if Qualadin wasn't part of a literal starter Pokemon family, it would easily be among the most forgettable Pokemon of all time. It was very tempting to pick Hisui and Avalugg, since I think that even if you do think of Avalugg, it's perfectly possible to completely forget it even has a regional form, but since that technically isn't a Gen 6 or Kalos Pokemon, it didn't feel right. So instead, I'm going for Helioptile and Heliolisk. Might be controversial picks, I'd say they're probably the most memorable out of all my picks in this video, but these two are so easy to slip your mind. No prominent trainers use them, they're incredibly weak, they're not noteworthy in any spin-off or side content, they have nothing going for them really. But hey, with Legends EA coming up, this is the perfect moment to give them that much needed third stage or a Mega and make sure they are no longer the most forgettable. While I haven't done the math, I've always felt like Alola has a relatively high amount of a one-stage Pokemon, which is never a good thing if you want to end up being memorable. Some Pokemon have features unique enough to save them though, like Wishiwashi and Minior, while something like Bruxish benefits from people hating on its design so much it's hard to forget. Even if Komala has a pretty unique ability, I wanna say it's still very forgettable, but I think there's one Pokemon even worse off than the little koala. Comfey. Comfey just has nothing going for it. It's such a painfully unremarkable Pokemon in a way that's also kinda unsympathetic, if you get what I mean. Like, take Dunsparce. Dunsparce is unremarkable, but in a way that makes you feel sorry for it, in a cute and charming way. Comfey doesn't have that at all, it's just completely forgettable in every way. Moving on to Galar, where we can honestly keep things short, because this gen introduces a Pokemon that, in my eyes, is a top contender for most forgettable Pokemon of all time. Pinkerchin. Mind you, this was the first Pokemon I ever encountered full odds shiny during an actual playthrough after multiple decades worth of them, and I still forget it exists like 90% of the time. That's how bad it is. Sure, Indeedee is incredibly forgettable, and the Gossifleur line did its best to win this dubious title, but Pinkerchin is on a different level. Pinkerchin is at the top of the forgettable mountain, and it pulled the ladder up with it. I genuinely wouldn't be surprised if there would never be another Pokemon as forgettable as Pinkerchin. I know I asked this before with LGM and BGM, but I'm doing it again. If Pinkerchin is your #1 favorite Pokemon, please leave a comment and explain why. I'll pin it, I'll go that far. I just need to know whether I am ragging on someone's favorite Pokemon or whether we have truly found the exception to that old statement that every Pokemon is someone's favorite. Anyway, let's move on to the final generation, which is also a tricky one because not a lot of time has passed after all. I mean, I know I just said I often forget my first ever full odds shiny Pokemon, but my memory isn't so bad that I can't remember the new phases from Paldea. Especially those with relevant features, which is definitely something Cloth and Bombardier desperately needed. If those weren't Titan Pokemon, they'd be in big trouble. Cyclizar is saved thanks to its likely connection to the box legendaries, which means I am once again looking at a small evolution family for this generation. I don't think I've ever heard anyone talk about Rellor and Rapska. I feel like most Pokemon from Gen 9 have found their fans by now, some in larger numbers than others, but still. Well, these two just kinda exist, without seemingly anyone who's really rooting for them. Now, it could of course just be passing me by, and I do admit it's not like I've seen a ton of art or talk about say the Bramblin line, but Rellor and Rapska do feel even less memorable for some reason. Although, I guess time will tell whether they'll actually end up as the most forgettable when more years have passed. But yeah, those are the names I would say are the least memorable of all Pokemon. Which species often slip your mind? Let me know in the comments below if you can remember them, that is. If you enjoyed this video, please consider giving it a like and subscribing to the channel to stay updated on all my future Pokemon content coming up. For now, thanks for watching and enjoy the rest of your day.